Hello, I'm Christys, looking into a story that's set to shake up the political landscape on both sides of the Atlantic. Former US President Donald Trump, soon to be the next President of the United States, fresh off his November election victory, has made a bold declaration that's sure to ruffle more than a few feathers in Washington. In his first televised interview since reclaiming the presidency, Trump has doubled down on his promise to pardon supporters involved in the January 6th Capitol riots. Let's have a little look, shall we, at what he had to say.
I'm going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first
day.
Issue
these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
You know, by the way, they've been in there for years, and they're in a filthy, disgusting place.
Well, there you have it, folks. Trump in his characteristic style pulling no punches there. What does this mean, though, for America, for justice and for the future of democracy? Should we break it down a bit? Well, Trump's pledge to pardon January 6th protesters on day one of his presidency is not just a campaign promise. It is a statement of intent. He's effectively saying that he views these individuals not as rioters or insurrectionists, but as supporters who've been unfairly treated by the justice system. This isn't a new stance for Trump. He's long maintained that the legal proceedings against January 6th participants have been politically motivated. But now, with the presidency once again within his grasp, his words carry a lot more weight. Let's put this into perspective. We're not talking about a handful of people here. More than 1,250 individuals have been convicted or pled guilty in connection with those Capitol riots. Of these, at least 645 have been sentenced to prison terms ranging from a few days to 22 years. That's a lot of potential pardons. It's a move that would effectively nullify years of legal proceedings and investigations. But Trump seems undeterred by the scale of what he's proposing. What does this mean here in the UK, though? Well, let me tell you, it's more significant than you might think. First and foremost, this move by Trump could have serious implications for the special relationship between the UK and the US. Now, our two nations have long stood together as bastions of democracy and the rule of law. And Trump's promise to pardon those involved in what many viewed at the time as an attack on democracy could strain that relationship. Moreover, it sets a concerning precedent that could embolden extremist groups here in Britain. We've seen how political movements can cross the Atlantic, and there's a risk that some might view this as a green light for similar actions here. From an economic perspective, any political instability in the US could have ripple effects on our markets. The US is one of our largest trading partners, and uncertainty there often leads to volatility here. Lastly, it raises questions about the stability of Western democracy as a whole. If a leader can effectively nullify the consequences of an attack on the seat of government, what message does that send to the world? It's a development that our own politicians and diplomats will be watching very closely indeed. Now, Trump did mention that there might be some exceptions to this blanket pardon, but he was vague on the details, and it does raise questions about who might be left out on what grounds. Will it be based on the severity of their actions, their level of involvement, or perhaps some other criteria known only to Trump? One of the most controversial aspects of Trump's interview was his assertion that some of the Capitol attackers who assaulted police officers had no choice. Well, many would regard that as quite an astonishing statement. It suggests that Trump's views the violence against law enforcement not as a crime, but as a necessary action. This stance is likely to be met with outrage from police unions and law enforcement agencies across the US. It's a direct challenge to the narrative that's been built up around January 6th as an attack on democracy and the rule of law. Trump also made an emotional appeal, claiming that the lives of the January 6th participants have been destroyed. He painted a picture of individuals pressured into guilty pleas, their futures ruined by what he sees as an overzealous prosecution. And many will draw parallels between that and what we saw in the aftermath of the summer riots here. People being pressured into guilty pleas, allegedly, and then being given incredibly long prison sentences, in some cases for no more than posts on social media. The narrative of victimhood, though, is likely to resonate with Trump's base, and it fits neatly into the wider Trump worldview of a deep state conspiracy against him and his supporters. Interestingly, Trump drew a parallel between his proposed pardons and Joe Biden's recent pardon of his own son, Hunter. Trump criticised the outgoing president's decision to pardon Hunter Biden for convictions related to lying on gun ownership application forms and tax evasion. Well, this comparison serves two purposes. First, it attempts to normalise Trump's proposed mass pardons by equating them to Biden's familial pardon. Second, it keeps the spotlight on Biden family controversies, a key part of Trump's political strategy. When asked if he would direct his administration to arrest elected officials involved in investigating the Capitol attack, Trump denied that intention. However, he then added, honestly, they should go to jail. Well, this statement encapsulates the Trump approach, a formal denial followed by a thinly veiled threat. It's a strategy that keeps his opponents off balance and his supporters energized. Well, now let's zoom out a little bit and consider what this all means. Trump's promise to pardon January 6th participants is more than just a policy proposal. It's a repudiation of the entire narrative that has been built around the events of that day. The alternative narrative has been circulating in certain circles for years, but now with Trump potentially returning to the White House, it could become the official government position. That is a seismic shift in how America views one of the most controversial events in recent history. The legal implications of Trump's promise are staggering. A mass pardon of January 6th participants would effectively nullify years of work by the Justice Department. It would send a message that certain crimes, if committed in support of the right cause or the right person, can be forgiven. And it raises serious questions about the rule of law and the independence of the justice system. Now, if a president can simply wave away convictions for an attack on the Capitol, what does that mean for the future of American democracy? But politically, Trump's promise is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's likely to energise his base, who have long seen the January 6th prosecutions as politically motivated. On the other hand, it could provide ample ammunition for his opponents, who can paint him as soft on crime and disrespectful to law enforcement. It also sets up a potential conflict with more moderate Republicans, who may be uncomfortable with such a sweeping use of the pardon power. Now, how this plays out within the GOP will be fascinating to watch. From an international perspective, Trump's promise is likely to raise eyebrows. Many of America's allies have watched the January 6th proceedings with concern. A mass pardon could be seen as America turning its back on democratic norms and the rule of law. But as we wrap up, it's clear that Trump's promise to pardon January 6th participants is not simply that policy proposal. It's a statement of how he views the events of that day, the American justice system, and his own role in shaping the narrative of recent American history. Look, whether you see it as a necessary correction of injustice, and by the way, many people do, or, on the other side, a dangerous assault on the rule of law, well, it likely depends on your political perspective, doesn't it? But one thing is certain. If Trump follows through on this promise, it will be one of the most consequential acts of his presidency. As always, we'll be here to bring you the very latest developments. This is Patrick Christys for GB News, and don't forget to like and subscribe.